everyone, I'm Lydia Gibson. Oh, my camera's over here. Hi everyone, I'm Lydia Gibson. I'm one of the board members for the Data Science Learning Community, also known as DSLC. I'm really excited to have this workshop today. We have Ryan Johnson, Data Science Advisor at Posit, the makers of Positron. So probably give people like 1 minute or so to trickle in, and then Ryan, you could take away and get started. All right. Yeah, thanks everyone for joining. Thanks our TAs, Federica and Priyanka, and I hope you all enjoy.
Thanks, Lydia. Yeah, we can wait like another minute or so, and then we'll kick things off. In the meantime, for those that are here, if you haven't done so already and you'd like to participate, you will need to have Positron installed on your local machine and a Python interpreter as well. So Python's somewhere installed in your system. Not a requirement, but if you want to follow along with me on some of the exercises, you will need those two things. I think we got a decent enough size group to at least get started. So I'm going to kick off some of the presentation here, and then maybe some other folks will trickle in as we go through. All right, let me get all my windows and stuff situated, and then we'll get started. Alrighty, well, welcome everybody to today's workshop. I'm really excited to be presenting an introduction to Positron, specifically for Python users. And, just given the history of this group, I'm probably going to guess there's probably a few more R users than Python users. But obviously, any data science user, analyst, data scientist is welcome here. We're really going to focus more on Python today. So if this is the first time you're using Python, hopefully this will be very exciting. If I've never met you before, my name is Ryan Johnson. There's my bald head right there. I'm a data science advisor here at Posit. I'm on a whopping team of one. I kind of fall underneath our solutions engineering umbrella. But really my focus here at Posit is to ensure that folks using our tools, both our professional tools and our open source tools, are getting the most out of them. So a lot of times that means doing workshops, webinars, demos, or just general product demos, that kind of stuff. So as we go through today's session, if you have any questions, you have two options. You can post those questions into the Zoom chat. I have a few of my coworkers here. I know Libby's here. Hey, Libby. We can help you answer your questions in the chat, but I'm also okay because I like to keep these sessions really informal, casual, nice, safe learning environment. Feel free to come off mute, scream into the microphone, interrupt me. I'm totally okay with it. I want to make sure we get all of your questions answered. And as a note, we are recording today's session, and so we'll try to make that recording available to everyone afterwards. But in discussing the goal for today, so my goal for today's session is to provide everyone here with an introduction to Posit's newest IDE, which is called Positron. And I want to familiarize everyone with its core features as it pertains to Python development. So this session is really going to be tailored to those that are brand new to Positron and or brand new to Python. So if you fall into either one of those buckets, we're happy to have you here. If you're a Positron user, if you're a Python user, you're also more than welcome here, and hopefully you'll learn something new today. And before we get going into the actual content, I do have a disclaimer. Positron, this tool that we're going to be focusing on for today, is still in beta. So what does that mean? Well, it means things could still change a little bit. So the interface I'm going to be demonstrating today may look a little different in a few weeks. And also some of the features that we're developing in Positron may be released now in beta, but they may not be what we consider like a stable feature. And we're kind of still working through some bugs. But for the most part, Positron's been around for a little while now. I feel that it's pretty stable. I've been using it for my day-to-day work for quite some time now. but we do hope to kind of flip it into what we call production or general availability later this year. So it's pretty darn close, but there's still just a few kinks we need to work out. Now, again, for today's workshop, if you'd like to follow along with me, and it is totally optional. I know that some people learn best by just watching, so just grab some popcorn and watch me as I go through all the exercises. But if you learn best with hands-on keyboard, you will need to have Positron installed on your system. So I know Lydia posted a link in the Zoom chat for to this website where you can download Positron. And in addition, I've linked to some documentation on our Positron website that list out the Python requirements. So you will need to have Python and some other dependencies installed on your system for it to work properly. So these are the two links that you'll need to focus on. All right, so while you all are downloading Positron and getting your environment set up, let's talk a little bit about what exactly is Positron. Now, again, we've had it kind of released to the public for a while now, but it still is in beta. But chances are many of you have probably tinkered around with it at some point. So Positron is a next generation data science IDE. That's like the key component here is that we're building this IDE specific for data science. And it's built by us here at Posit, hence the name. Now, when I say data science IDE, that means it is really optimized for writing code, our Python code, and also for exploring data. As data scientists, work with data, we want to make sure that being able to actually interact with your data is a really great experience. Positron's also a polyglot IDE. If you've never heard of the word polyglot before, it just means that Positron is equipped to handle multiple data science languages. So currently, it's a great tool for both R and Python. And we're going to talk about in a little bit how it's kind of set up for additional data science languages that may not even exist today, which is pretty cool. And Positron is designed specifically for reproducible authoring and publishing. Now, we're not going to focus too much on publishing today, but we will highlight some of the features for creating these reproducible workflows for all of your data science projects. Now, you may be asking yourself, why did we decide to create Positron? So Posit, as many of you probably know, has been in the IDE space for a while, IDE being an integrated development environment where you write code. Before we were Posit, our company named Posit, we were formerly known as RStudio. And our biggest product that we ever created was the RStudio IDE. Now, this continues to be a fantastic IDE. We still do a lot of development work on it. And it's really designed for data science, specifically for R developers. Now, RStudio, you can certainly code in Python, but it was originally designed for R. And it's really not designed for additional languages kind of outside of R and a little bit of Python. And while you can customize RStudio slightly, like you can change the theme, you can add in some new panes or rearrange the panes, for the most part, it's kind of set in its ways. So it's not extremely customizable, just a little bit. Now, there is another IDE that many of you are probably familiar with that is Visual Studio Code. And this is a great polyglot IDE. So if you work in R, Python, Julia, HTML, JavaScript, you can probably find a home within Visual Studio Code. And it's also extremely customizable given its rich library of extensions, which we'll talk about a little bit more towards the end. But VS Code was originally designed more for software engineering. And while you certainly can do data science, I know a lot of people do use VS Code for their data science work, it wasn't really created with that in mind. So why did we create Posit? Well, we wanted to take these two IDEs and essentially smush them together to get the best of all kind of capabilities. So Positron is a polyglot IDE that is tailored for data science, and it is extremely customizable, as you'll see here in a little bit. Now, that's why we decided to build it, but how did we actually build it? So VS Code, for some of you, this may be new information. It was for me when I was learning about Positron and VS Code. It's actually built upon an open source framework called Code OSS. And so Microsoft, the company, they essentially took a fork, so it's hosted on GitHub, they forked that repository when creating Visual Studio Code. So what did Posit do? Essentially the exact same thing. We forked Code OSS to create Positron. And because it's built on the same framework as VS Code, when you first open up Positron, it's going to kind of look and feel a little bit like VS Code, but also, again, has some great kind of RStudio capabilities in there as well. Now, a little bit more about behind the scenes of Positron, which is really cool, why it's really powerful. So Positron, because it is built on the same framework as VS Code, a lot of those extensions that many of you may be using in your day-to-day work will work perfectly fine in Positron. So that's a pretty powerful functionality that this extremely rich library of extensions for VS Code will automatically work within Positron, albeit any Microsoft proprietary extensions. But there is one additional API that I want you all to be aware of. That is the Positron Extension API. So it is an additional API that we built into Positron. It sounds kind of simple just to say that, but taking it from the software engineer's mouth, this was a huge undertaking to create this additional API. And the main thing that this Positron Extension API gives us as data scientists is the ability to add language packs. Currently, when you install Positron, it comes with 2 packs already pre-installed. It has a Python language pack, which leverages IPyKernel and Jedi, and it has an R language pack, which leverages this relatively new tool. It's a kernel of R and R kernel Arc for its R language capabilities. And again, because of this API, these are kind of meant to be, your building blocks. So we encourage, the data science community. We're certainly working on them here at Posit, but you can certainly add additional language packs and incorporate them into Positron, which is why we really see Positron as like a future-proof tool, because there may be data science languages that don't even exist today. Maybe in 100 years, the landscape of data science languages is completely different, but we certainly hope that Positron will still be able to accommodate them. So this is it. This is Positron. This is what it looks like in its current state if you were to install it today, and what it looks like. Again, for those that are VS Code users, this will look very similar to VS Code, but for those that are RStudio users, maybe you'll notice some other kind of RStudio flourishes, like that kind of inherent 4-pane data science. So when you open up VS Code for the first time, the first window I want you to focus on is the one here in the bottom left. This is known as your console. This is what you can kind of think of as like a live window into the R or Python programming language. Currently, you can see here it's set to Python. So if I wanted to, I could write some Python right here. The other important thing to note about the console is that there is a tab right next to it for your terminal or command line. That's going to be a little bit important later on when we start going through some of the exercises. So that's the console. The next window, and again, this is all the same within RStudio, this is known as your source pane. So as you're developing things like Shiny applications or R scripts or Python scripts or Quarto documents, R Markdown, fast APIs, and you're writing source code, you're typically going to be doing it here in this window. When you open up Positron for the first time, chances are you're probably seeing this welcome screen, which has some helpful links for getting started with your next data science project, or you can just close out of it by clicking the X. Now, over here on the right-hand side, this is where kind of that RStudio feel comes into play. So unlike VS Code that does not have a variables pane, Positron does. So as you start to create things and store them in memory, so maybe you create a variable, you can actually see your variables here on the variable pane, which just helps improve the developer experience. And then again, similar to RStudio, we have down here a plots or viewer pane. So as you create ggplots or matplotlib plots or tables, you can actually see them here within your IDE, which is a really powerful feature of Positron. So those are the 4 windows. And if you look along the top of the Positron IDE, you'll see a few additional bells and whistles. Over here on the left-hand side, this is your way to create brand new files, folders, or data science projects, or open up any previously created file, folder, or projects. If you want to save a file that you're working on, we have the ever-present floppy disk symbol, so you can save your files that way. Real important here, at the very top of the Positron IDE, this is conserved within Visual Studio Code, we have the command palette, an extremely powerful feature of Positron, because anything you may want to do in your data science, you want to create a new file, or you want to run a core to a document. If you come into the command palette, it does leverage this fuzzy searching capability. So even if you just think you know what you want to do, type it in the command palette and it'll prompt you with the various commands that you can then enter. On the right-hand side, you'll notice this is your interpreter window or selector dropdown. Currently, I have it set to Python version 3.10.13, but with the simple click and of a selection of a dropdown menu, you could switch over to R if you wanted to, which is really cool. And then the last option over here is your project folder. So as you open up new projects, which do kind of focus on this folder structure, the name of the project will actually show up here in the top right. Now, sticking to that concept of projects in Positron, I have two rules that I want you all to remember when it comes to essentially creating a brand new data science project in Positron. So for every project you're working on, one project should equal one folder. That's this concept of kind of project-oriented workflows that all of your data science projects should be isolated from one another. They're not all just kind of picking from one giant folder that contains everything. This helps make things a little bit more reproducible and certainly cleaner for navigation purposes. Now, when it comes to VS Code and Positron, it actually kind of depends on this structure. So you need to be within a folder in order to do your data science projects. Additionally, rule number 2 is that you need to leverage virtual environments. Now, if you do leverage VS Code today, you typically have to manually create these virtual environments. But Positron's pretty cool, and it will automatically create these virtual environments for you, which we're going to see here in a little bit. But the whole purpose of virtual environments is to keep your projects isolated from one another so that one project doesn't impact another. You keep it all within this little virtual bubble, so to speak. All right, so that's going to bring us to our very first assignment, which I'm going to give you all a few minutes to try out for yourself, and then we'll come together and I will do it as a group. As we're going through today's assignments, if you have any questions or issues, definitely add them to the chat. We have a few TAs here to help you out. We can pop you into a breakout room to try and get you situated. But the first assignment, we're going to keep it pretty straightforward, and I'm going to have some instructions here in the next slide. But I want you all to get some practice creating a brand new Python project in Positron. So imagining that you come in Monday morning, your boss has this data set, and you're like, okay, I'm going to analyze it with Python using Positron. How do I get started? So creating a Python project in Positron is this 4 steps. We're going to start up here in the very top. So if you remember along the top of the Positron IDE, there is going to be a new drop-down menu. And the second option will be a new project. So go ahead and select new project. After you've done that, you're going to get prompted here to select a project type. We are focusing in on Python today, so make sure you select Python project. In step 3, you can give your project a name. It'll typically give you a default prompt, but you can change up the project name if you'd like. You also want to choose where you want to place it in your file system. So if you're running Positron on your local machine, put it on your home directory or your desktop, totally fine. You can delete it after this workshop. Now you're going to notice down here at the bottom of step 3, there's this checkbox right here to initialize the project as a Git repository. For reproducible workflows, we would always recommend using version control and initializing your projects as a Git repository. But that's more of a focus for another session. So if you want, you can leave this box unchecked. But again, we would typically always recommend initializing your projects as a Git repository. And then once you select next, the last window here, this one's really powerful, is that Positron is going to ask you some questions about your Python environment. So do you want to create a new Python environment, which is recommended? So let's go ahead and select that option. And then it's going to ask you, how do you want to create that Python environment? We are using a virtual environment. So there's a few different tools to create virtual environments, but we're going to focus on one called VENV or VENV. All right, so we'll select Venv here, and then you can choose your Python version. So you may have multiple versions of Python installed in your computer. You can select which Python version you want. And then once you're done, go ahead and click Create, and that's going to bring you to, again, the Positron IDE. You should see the name of your project in the top right corner. If it's not already open, you'll see this blue sidebar along the top. At the very top, there's your File Explorer. you want to make sure that's open so you can see this project and the included virtual environment we just created, this .venv. And again, I want to emphasize that Positron created this virtual environment for you. You didn't have to manually do it, which is a really powerful feature of Positron. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to leave these 4 steps up on my screen, and I'm going to give you about 2 or 3 minutes to finish this up, create that Python project, kind of a brand new project, and get ready for the next couple steps in our workshop today. If you have any questions, again, feel free to add them to the chat, come off mute, and we'll try to get you situated. While y'all are doing that, something I like to do in all of my workshops, sometimes it can be hard on virtual workshops to get live feedback, but Zoom actually has a really nice feature to add emojis or reactions. So at the very bottom of the Zoom screen, there should be the way to give me like a thumbs up emoji. If you've completed this assignment and you've created a Python project, go ahead and give me a thumbs up emoji or any emoji you want. There are thousands to choose from. All right, I'm seeing a few come through. Awesome job, everybody. We'll give you a few more minutes here to get this all situated. It may take a couple seconds for it to create that virtual environment. That's normal. Perfect. Awesome. Seeing some emojis come through in the chat as well. Great job, everybody. Nice. All right. So while you all are finishing that up, I'm going to start doing it on my end as well. Again, for those that may not be following along with hands on keyboard and just kind of want to see me go through this process. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over to my personal Positron IDE that I've installed on my personal laptop. So this is what it looks like when you first open it up. Again, we have those 4 panes, which you can always click and drag to resize, just like you could in our studio. So we're going to create a brand new project. Before I even do that, it's just important to note that I'm not currently within a project. And how do I know that? So if you look here in the top right corner, you're going to notice this little folder icon. It doesn't currently list anything. So that's a good indicator letting you know you're not currently using a project. You can also click on this file directory over here, and it's letting you know that you've not opened any folders, right? So you're not within a project. So let's go ahead and create a brand new one. So in the top left corner, I'll select New, and we'll select New Project. So here's that first window where we're going to create a Python project. Again, we could create an R project or a Jupyter notebook. So we're going to stick with Python today. Click Next. We can give this project a name. I'm just going to say test. I think I have a bunch of tests on my desktop, so we're just going to make it something unique, but you can change this to whatever you want. And then you can place it in your home directory, or if you wanted to place it, somewhere else in your file system, like I'm going to put it on my desktop. And then again, we would typically recommend that you initialize the project as a Git repository, but just for today's session, for simplicity's sake, I'm going to leave this unchecked. And then lastly, how would you like to set up that Python environment? So I'm going to leverage a virtual environment, again, using venv, and I'm just going to use this Python version 3.10. You can actually see here on my computer, I actually have 3 different versions of Python, including 3.11, 3.9, in different locations. So you can choose which Python you want. So I'll hit create, and we'll let Python Positron take care of the rest. This is asking if we want to leverage the same window or if we want to open up a new window of Positron. I'm just going to say current window. Now, it's going to take a couple seconds to create that virtual environment. So you'll see starting up here. But once it is done, if we take a look here, you'll see the name of the project in the top right. You'll now see that I'm using Python version 3.10.13, again, a virtual environment. That's where Python's being invoked. And if you look down here in my console, you see I have my console ready for Python coding. I'm using a virtual environment. Here's my project, and I'm clicking on this file directory icon, and the virtual environment's been created for us. So essentially, the stage has been set. We are ready to go and start doing some more Python data science-y stuff. All right, so good job, everybody, for completing that first assignment. Let's switch back to the slides. And we're going to jump right into our next assignment. So again, part of this workshop is introducing you to Positron, but I also want to introduce folks to Python itself. Many folks here may just be R users and kind of looking for that first door into Python. So hopefully this can be that door. So we're going to write some Python code. We're going to keep it purposely pretty simple, and then we'll do some more, I wouldn't call it advanced, but more data sciencey stuff later on. So here's some of the Python code I want you to write. So a really cool part about Positron when you create that Python project, as you'll see here, is that it automatically opened up a blank script for us to write some code. So you can click up here on number 1, and you can start writing some Python code. So you can type these out exactly as I have them on the slide, but essentially we're just doing some basic lines of Python code, like some basic addition, right? That's the same in R, it's the same in Python, which is nice. We're also going to create variables. So here I'm assigning the variable a to the value 4, which looks a little different in R because typically we use that arrow syntax. Here in Python, you just use a single equals. Here we're doing some relational analyses, comparing our variable to the number 3. On line 7, I'm creating a list. All right, this is a little bit more Python focused. So lists are square brackets, and inside of the list, separated by commas, are your various elements of your list. In this example, I just have 3 numbers, 0, 1, and 5. And then the last line down here, we're introducing you to functions in Python. So here I have the min function. So just like in R, functions have a name and then an open and close parentheses, and inside of them are your arguments. So the only argument we're going to add here is the actual list. Now, once you've typed out this Python code, you may be asking yourself, how do I actually run it? And Positron's pretty cool on how you can run Python code. You have some options. You could highlight any bits of code you want and then click the drop-down menu. You'll see in the IDE this little play button. There's a little drop-down option to run that selection in the console, that console window. That's one option. I'd say that's probably a little less common than most. Where I typically see folks leveraging Positron for Python code execution are the last two. So you can literally put your cursor on any line of Python code and click Command Enter or Control Enter if you're on a Windows machine, and that will run that specific line of code. That's a very powerful feature of Positron, something you can't do in a VS Code. And then you could also highlight the code instead of just placing your cursor on it, and similarly do Command Enter or Control Enter. All right, so we're going to go ahead and do this one together. So I'm going to start typing out these bits of code here. I'll make my screen a little bit bigger so y'all can see it. So I'm first going to start with some basic math, 2 plus 2, just like so. I'm going to add a little space. I'm going to create a variable. So I'll hit a equals 4. Down here, I'm going to compare a and see if it is less than the number 7. Just making up some random ones. Here we're going to create a list. So I'm going to create a variable name called myList, and we're going to create a list. So square brackets. Inside the square brackets, I'll just add some random numbers like so. And then lastly, we're going to use the min function and supply in the name of the list. And you'll also notice Positron has a pretty rich autocomplete feature. So as things are starting to show up, you can always click on them to autocomplete. Now to execute this code, we could highlight it, click the drop down, run selection in console. That's one. But what I typically like to do is just put my cursor on it, Command Enter, and notice how it ran it down here in the console. So we'll do that for 2 plus 2. Let me assign the variable a to the number 4. And notice how it now shows up in our variable pane over here on the right-hand side. So this is just a handy feature so you can see what's in memory, which is a really powerful thing. It's always been around in our studio, but hasn't really been around in VS Code. So we try to make that functionality here in Positron. Now we can compare a. Is it less than the value 7? It certainly is. That's why that equates to true. We can also create a list. So I'll run this bit of code on line 7. And you'll see the list, the variable name, and its value over here on the right-hand side. And then lastly, to introduce you to functions, we'll use the min function, which you can probably guess what it's going to do. I'll run it, and it extracts the minimum value from my list, which just so happens to be 2. All right, go ahead and give me an emoji of your choice if you were successful in running some Python code here within Positron. And my only rule is you can't use the same emoji twice. So if you've used the thumbs up before, you can no longer use it. It's off limits. All right, nice job, everybody. Again, pretty simple, but hopefully this is a good little, breaking into Python for those that have never used Python before. All right, awesome job, everybody. Let's keep moving on. And I want to really talk about functions. For those that are R developers here on the call, you'll know that functions are essentially the bread and butter of the R programming language. Everything in R is a function. The same for the most part can be said about Python. So functions in Python, many of them come caked into the Python language itself. So we just use the min function. We didn't have to install anything extra. It was just there. Right? So min function and also things like the max function. But similar to R, in Python, many functions that you'll use for your data science work will be living outside of the Python language, typically within as a package or a module. And it's very common for packages to have 1, 4, 10, 1,000, multiple functions all within a single package. Now, a bit of a tangent here, but I always think this is an important point to pass along, that in R and Python, a package is considered the fundamental unit of shareable code. So think about the holidays where you're going to buy someone a present. How do you get that present to somebody? Well, you put it inside of a package and mail it out. Same thing applies for data science in R and Python. You write some code and you want someone else to use it. What do? Put it inside of a package and send it out. Chances are you're building packages for other people, but more likely you're probably building it for your future self. Now, inside of most Python packages, there'll be these 4 things. Obviously, your Python code, the functions that you've created that you want to share. Some Python packages have data built into them to help explore the functions, or maybe the package depends on it. All great Python packages have good documentation so people know how to use the functions. And it is optional, but you may see some unit tests inside there as well, just to make sure all those functions are behaving as expected. Now, within the data science realm, for common Python packages you may see, there are some logos of some of the more popular Python data science packages. Things like TensorFlow, scikit-learn, NumPy, SciPy, Pandas, Matplotlib. So chances are, as you start to dive into data science using Python, you're probably going to come across some of these packages. So the question then becomes, how do I install a package? So it's not currently in my Positron environment, but I want to use it. How do I install it? So there's a few different ways you can install Python packages, but the one we're going to focus in on for today is something known as pip. And many of you probably heard of this tool before. A fun fact about pip, it's actually an acronym. It stands for Python Install Package. And it is a way to install, but also manage Python packages in your environment. Now, the main difference between installing packages in R versus Python is that in R, you do it within R. So you run the install.packages function. For Python, you install packages outside of Python inside of your terminal or command line. So that's why pip is known as a command line interface tool or CLI tool. Fortunately, if you're not familiar with the terminal or command line, it is insanely easy to use it. Here, I have all the syntax you'll need to know. Pip, install, and then the name of the package you want to install. Now, it is best practice to restart your session every time you install, remove, or update packages. And I'm going to show you how to do that here in a second. But before we get some hands-on practice installing a Python package, you may also be asking, where are you installing packages from? So when you run that pip command, it's going to reach out somewhere to pull in that package into your local Positron environment. Now, similar to R, packages live inside of repositories. And a repository is nothing more than just a giant collection of packages that you can shop around, find that package of your dreams, and then install it into your own personal environment. Now, if you're using pip, the default repository will be something known as the Python Package Index, or PyPI for short. Now, as of this month, so these metrics are pretty current, there is well over 500,000 packages on PyPI. It is massive. And for those that are R developers, PyPI is analogous to CRAN, which is by far the largest repository of R packages. CRAN has close to 30,000. So PyPI just blows it out of the water. And again, if you're using pip and you don't do anything else, by default, it will leverage PyPI. As a quick little plug here for one of our professional data science tools here at Posit, we do have something called Posit Package Manager. What that allows you to do is your data science team can have your own version of PyPI or your own version of CRAN, or maybe subsets of those repositories, or host any internally developed packages and serve them to your data science community. All right, so that's going to bring us to our next assignment. This will be a quick one, but I want you all to get some practice installing a Python package using Positron. So in order to do this, most importantly, you're going to have to switch from your console over to your terminal. So within that console window, which is typically in the bottom left-hand corner, make sure you select the terminal. Now, everyone's terminal may look a little bit different. So if you see something that doesn't quite look like this in your terminal, that's okay. This is just my personal environment, but just make sure you select terminal. And you will also need to have pip installed on your system. So if it's not installed, this may not work. You may need to actually install pip from your kind of a system dependency standpoint. But hopefully you all have this set up. So in order to install a package, you just need to go to terminal and then run this command, pip install. And the first package I want you all to install is one called matplotlib. This is a very common Python package for data visualization. You can almost think of it in many ways like the equivalent of ggplot2 in Python. So let me give you all a couple seconds here to try out installing your very first package in Positron, again, from within the terminal. And if you're successful in doing so, go ahead and give me another emoji of your choice. And it'll take a couple seconds to install matplotlib. Similar to R, in Python, it's very common for packages to depend on other packages. So by installing matplotlib, chances are there's going to be quite a few additional packages that will be installed for you. But again, that's the beauty of pip, is that it is a package management system. It takes care of all those dependencies for you. All right, I see some emojis coming in, but I'll give folks a few more seconds to try this out. I'll do it here on my end here in a second.
Ryan, I have a question, well, kind of based on the chat. So should you still see the dot the end when in your terminal? Someone was saying they don't think they're seeing the virtual environment.
Yeah, if they don't, again, that may not be the case because this is my personal computer that's running this on. So I've tailored my terminal a little bit. I don't typically like to do that. I like to kind of work from like a vanilla standpoint. But I have kind of installed some things to make my terminal look a little bit different. Another way you may see the virtual environment is on your prompt. And I guess I wish I had a way to actually show this, but within your prompt, it's likely going to be like your username and like a $sign. At the very beginning, potentially in parentheses, you should see .venv. So that might be what some people are seeing on their environment. But it should automatically, in this terminal, pop you right into that virtual environment. You shouldn't have to do anything else. Yep, I see Libby just posted it when I was kind of referencing. So at the beginning of your prompt in parentheses, you should see .venv. Perfect. Okay. So I saw some emojis coming through, but let's go ahead and do this together as a group. And I'm doing it here in my Positron environment. So I'm going to switch over to my terminal. So again, that's down here in your bottom left quadrant. So I'll select terminal. Again, my terminal may look a little bit different from yours. That's okay. But here within this prompt, I'm going to run pip install matplotlib, just like so. And once we hit enter, pip is going to install this package and all of its dependencies into my current virtual environment. So again, that's an important point. That's installing these packages kind of scoped to this data science project inside of this virtual environment. And it ensures that any package I update here, install here, that it's not impacting any other data science project on my system. So that's that reproducible workflow we've been talking about before. All righty, so the other thing I want to mention here is that once you've installed matplotlib, again, you have your prompt back here at the bottom. it's always a best practice to restart your Python session, right? That's typically what I do. I think it's just a good idea to restart frequently. To restart your Python session within Positron, you're going to navigate to the top where you have your Python interpreter selected. Choose the drop-down option here, and it should be a little kind of like arrow to restart your Python session. So don't turn it off, but go ahead and restart it. So I'm going to go ahead and do that on my environment as well. So I'll select this top option up here, and we're going to select the restart button. And it'll take a couple seconds to restart. If you switch back over to your console, it should have some messaging here to let you know that Python, the version you're using, has restarted. All right, I'll give folks a couple seconds to get caught up, and then we'll move on to the next part. But y'all are doing great so far. All right, so let me come back to my slides here. Now, another question you all may be asking yourself is you've installed a package or potentially multiple packages in your environment, but you just kind of forget, like, what packages do I have installed? What versions do I have installed? I also want to confirm, can you all still see my slides right now? Lydia, can you give me like a little thumbs up? Okay, perfect. So there is a really another handy function.
Wait, sorry, not slides, Positron.
Okay, I think I may have screwed something up. So let me just go ahead and reshare really quick. Okie dokie, if I do presenter view here. All right, can you see my slides now?
Yes.
All right, lovely. Okay, so again, you may just want to know what Python packages currently live in your virtual environment. So there's two functions I want you to all be familiar with. Again, leveraging pip. There's pip list and pip freeze. Both of these will do the exact same thing. They will list the Python packages in your environment and their corresponding versions. Pip list will make it much more human readable. Pip freeze will make it a bit more computer readable. So what you're seeing in this screenshot is the output from pip freeze, where you can see the name of the packages in your environment, two equal symbols, and the corresponding version. So feel free to stay in your terminal and run these two commands and just see what the output looks like. And while you all are doing that, you may also be asking yourself, like, okay, maybe I want to actually document this. Like, what packages am I using so that if I share this project with somebody else, they know exactly what packages I used, what versions, and they could restore their environment to match mine, right? Which is great for sharing data science projects. So we're going to show you that workflow here in a second. All right, let me switch over to Positron again. Go back to my terminal. I'm going to clear my console, my terminal here. So I'm going to do that by doing Control L on my keyboard, right, if you're running a Mac computer. So I'm going to go ahead and run pip list. That's the first one. And you'll notice you get this really nicely formatted table where you can see all the packages in your environment and their corresponding versions. We can then run pip freeze. It'll show you the exact same information, but again, much more machine readable. And what's very common to do to document your package environment for your data science project is to take this command and push the output into a file called requirements.txt, just like so. So you'll notice this syntax here creates this file and takes all the output from pip freeze and puts it in there. And you should now see it if you decided to run this. You don't have to run this command if you don't want to, but it did create this file, which you can now see in my file explorer with all my packages and their corresponding version. So this is an important file for reproducible workflows. If you're going to share your data science project with somebody else, or again, more likely, your future self. And so we're coming towards the end here, and I want to focus in on this package that we just installed, matplotlib. So I shamelessly went to their website and snagged some screenshots of various plots and things you can do with matplotlib. And again, just emphasizing, it is a package really designed for data visualization. So we've installed it, but like, now what? How do we actually use it in our Python analyses? So for this last assignment, we're going to create a plot positron. Just kind of give you that feel of what it looks like to create a plot and also how to visualize plots in Positron. So we're going to stick with that same script we included that previous Python code in. So you can delete that Python code, and we're going to add in some new code. So let's step through these 2 lines of Python code. At the very top, we're going to leverage a function called import. So this will import any packages you've installed into this current analysis. So here we have the matplotlib package, and specifically, we are going to use a module within this package. So this is syntax that's a little bit more specific to the Python world. All right, so we're going to leverage this pyplot module. So that's going to basically import this package and this module into our analysis so we can start using the functions inside of it. So here on line 3, we're going to use matplotlib. Again, that's the name of the package. Inside of this package is the pyplot module, separated by a period. Inside of this module is a function called plot. So just like before with the min function, functions have open and close parentheses. Inside of the parentheses are your arguments. And for the arguments here, you only need to supply 2 lists. So remember before how we created a list, square brackets, and you can separate the elements with commas. So we have 1 list right here. You can make it as many numbers as you want. Here I have just 4 numbers. And then you're going to separate for a second list over here, which can have another set of numbers of equal length. So if you have 4 over here, make sure you have 4 over here. So go ahead and type this out, run the code as you've learned before, and just kind of get a sense of what happens. So I'm going to leave this on my screen just for a second. I don't want to tip my hat and spoil the surprise. So I'll leave these 2 bits of code here. Try running them in your own Positron environment, and hopefully you'll see a really cool plot. And I definitely want to know if you're successful in getting a plot to show up in Positron. Give me a really fun emoji. No thumbs up. You've already used thumbs up. Looking at you, Flores. There you go. Better. Definitely appreciate all comments in the chats. I see some probably issues that are going to pertain to your individual environment. Again, these are just things that are a little bit hard to control for when we're all working from our own personal computers. But hopefully the TAs and other folks have been able to get you situated. All right, I'm seeing a few emojis come through. So again, hopefully this is exciting to create your very first plot in Positron. All right, well, just for the sake of time, I'm going to go ahead and start doing this on my end, but keep working. All right, so I'm going to switch back to my console. I'm going to close out this requirements.txt file. Here's that original script we were working on. I'm just going to delete all the contents. All right, so we're going to first import. All right, notice how Positron has really nice syntax highlighting. So if you use a function within Python, typically it will color it, let you know you typed it out correctly. And we're going to import matplotlib and the pyplot module. All right, so that's going to be on line 1. I'm going to add a little space here, which is optional, but I always like to add space between my lines of Python code, just makes it a bit more readable. So here's the syntax. We need to use the matplotlib package, and there's a module called pyplot. And inside of that module, there is a function called plot, just like so. All right, so inside of this plot function, we're going to add 2 lists. So we're going to have 1 here, comma, 1 here. And inside of that first list, I'm going to add in some random numbers. I'm just going to do 4. And then I'll do 4 additional numbers over here. I'll do 7, 7, 1, 2, something like that. All right, so let's go ahead and run these 2 lines of code. So I'm going to put my cursor on line number 1, and I'm going to hit Command Enter on my keyboard. If things go as expected, it'll run down here in the console, and I'm not seeing any error messages, so that's good. So it looks like we've imported matplotlib in the pyplot module. Let's go ahead and create a plot. Line 3, put my cursor here, Command Enter. Cool, I made a Z completely on accident. So here is that really cool matplotlib plot that's now being visualized in Positron. And again, I don't want to undersell how powerful this capability is to visualize things you've created in your various data science projects. Something that's very hard to do in VS Code, very easy to do in our studio, but now you can do it just as easily in Positron. Alrighty, so again, here's just kind of a screenshot of what hopefully you all are seeing, something like this. So kudos to those that got it working. I want to wrap up here talking about extensions. So just for the sake of time, we're not all going to get practice installing them or exploring them, but I at least want to explain what they are because they are really powerful, especially if you're an RStudio user and you've never used VS Code before. So an extension. So imagine you're trying to create something in Positron. Maybe you're trying to create a plot or a Shiny app or a Quarto document. And you just want to ask the question, can I somewhat tailor my environment for Shiny app development or for Quarto document creation? That's where extensions come into play. So on the left-hand side of the Positron IDE, you're going to see this little building block icon. Feel free to click on it now. If this is the first time you're opening up Positron, chances are you probably don't have any extensions installed, but you can feel free to explore all the various extensions you have available to you. For example, we have, you don't see it on this screenshot, but we have a Shiny extension. We have a Quarto extension that we've built here at Posit. You can install into your own environment, and it just helps customize the experience. So it may add on some additional features to help kind of boost what Positron can do natively. It can help customize your workflow. So maybe you need a specific language or you need a specific task to kind of really kind of fine tune your workflows. This third bullet point is really important. It can help integrate with other tools. So if you're using things like version control or debuggers or linters, and you want a better experience working with these external tools, chances are there's probably an extension for it. One of the extensions I want to point out here, again, just a little plug here to our professional tools, you'll notice this icon. Many of you probably don't have that icon on your Positron. Maybe you do. Maybe with the recent versions, it may come already pre-installed. But this is known as the Posit Publisher. It's a way to take the content you've created, like Shiny apps or Quarto documents or APIs, and publish them to things like Posit Connect. And so you can literally do that with the push of a button using this Posit Publisher extension that we built. And ultimately, there's just designed to boost your productivity. All right, so what's next for Positron? So hopefully today's session was just a quick overview of how to get started, get you familiar with Positron's user interface, and also just get you practice with creating a Python project and some kind of hands-on experience coding in Python, creating plots in Python, installing packages in Python. Now, again, Positron is in beta. We're hoping to have it released in GA or general availability very soon. Definitely stay kind of in the know here with the Positron website, which simply is just positron.posit.co. This is where we'll have all of the latest information about new releases of Positron. There's also a get started page, guides, a lot of great information that we're going to continue to build out on this website. But with that, I want to leave about 5 or so minutes for any questions. So I'll stop sharing and open it up to the floor. I noticed a lot of activity in the chat, so appreciate you all chiming in there, which is always great to see.
Hey, I'll jump in with a question. Thank you so much. This is so useful. I guess, so I'm a long time RStudio user, and I admittedly have never gotten great with VS Code or PyCharm or other things because I'm like so ingrained in RStudio and I really like it. This seems like a super useful tool where, like, when people are getting started, especially coming more from the R ecosystem, what do you see people getting wrong? Or like, where do you see gaps as folks sort of transition into using Python in this environment? I'm so used to, like, my brain uses Python in one place and R in one place. Yeah, I'm just curious, like, what you see as you onboard new folks.
Yeah, it's a good question because Positron's so new. I may not have enough of a value of N, so to speak, to kind of get a sense of, like, you know, what are people doing? How are they, especially if they're coming from RStudio and looking to use Positron for Python work or their R work, like where they're kind of struggling at certain points. So it is a new interface
for what would be weird.
Yeah. So there are some cool things I just want to note here, and this probably isn't addressing your question specifically, but there is actually a feature in Positron. You can probably find it on the command palette. So that little text box at the very top, all the key bindings that you probably love about RStudio, you can actually enable in Positron by default.
That's
So
amazing.
typically, like you won't even have to change like your, muscle memory of your fingers and how you do your data science in RStudio. You can just apply those key bindings to Positron and most things will work right out of the gate. But because RStudio or Positron is such a customizable interface, it can be a little daunting for that matter. So if I reshare my screen here, and I always do this where I stop sharing and I always reshare. I mean, this is the 4-pane data science that RStudio is known for. We have our source pane, the console, and the 2 panes over here on the right-hand side. But if you'll notice here in the top right corner, you can actually modify this if you'd like. So for example, if you want to drop that window or drop the side pane and just have your source pane, this is something you'll see in VS Code that is not really available in RStudio. And I think because it's so flexible, people might be kind of reluctant to be like, oh, I've just screwed something up. I've lost my console. I don't know where to get it now. I'm lost. That can be, I think, a little bit overwhelming to some folks. So that's probably one thing.
Cool. The keyboard shortcuts will make my life way easier. Because yeah, part of it is like I literally turn on and off parts of my brain, right? In Python because my workflows are so different.
I'm trying to see, there's like settings here, maybe like preferences, RStudio. Yeah, here we go. So I went to, just to kind of show you how I did that again, I came up here. This command palette typically require that little forward caret. If I go to preferences, open workspace settings, and then under settings here, type RStudio. Again, this is also like an interface. It's going to feel pretty new, especially if you're coming from RStudio. But you'll see enable RStudio key mappings for Positron, and that way things will just work, which is really nice.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yep. Good question. We got like 2 minutes or so. So any other questions from the group?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm just wondering what's the future prospect for the development of RStudio with relation to this one for Positron? Will the development for RStudio stop at one point or?
Nope. We have a pretty impressive software engineering squad here at Posit that's completely dedicated to the RStudio IDE. And they will continue to work here at Posit and continue to push out new features to RStudio. I mean, RStudio, the IDE, that's essentially how our company started. Like, it's our baby. How could we get rid of it? We're not going to. So we're going to continue to make enhancements to it, improve the functionality. We're still pushing out new versions of RStudio, and that's going to continue to be the same long into the future. So we will not getting rid of RStudio anytime soon, and hopefully never.
All right. So I understand that Positron would be more for people who like to combine multiple languages, right?
Essentially, it's really just kind of, if you're an R developer and you've been using RStudio forever and it fits exactly what you need to do, you don't need to switch over to Positron. But if you want to have a familiar environment for all of your data science work, if it's R, if it's Python, if it's other languages in the future, now you have one interface that you can learn with, you can grow with, and it'll be the same long into the future. We just may have additional language packs. So we're just trying to create that, I don't want to use a Lord of the Rings reference, but one IDE to rule them all kind of thing. But like any language you're using, hopefully you can use it from with Positron. RStudio certainly is a little bit more R focused, but that's just kind of my 2 cents on it.
All right, thank you.
All right, I know we're right at time, so I want to make sure I'm respectful of everyone's time here. So with that, maybe I'll just thank everybody and I'll pass the mic over to Lydia for any closing remarks.
Yeah, so thank you all for joining. Thank you so much for Ryan. Thank you for taking your time and doing this presentation for us. Thank you for our TAs, Federica and Priyanka. And yeah, I hope you all got as much out of this as I did. And yeah, thanks. And I hope everyone has a great day.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.